Hello and welcome to our Monday Night Bible Study. We are continuing our look into the book of Ecclesiastes. We are not going to get through chapter 2 today as I had hoped, but we're going to come close. So we'll finish up chapter 2 next week, but this is, we're fixing to get into some relatively hard questions that Solomon's going to ask, and he's not, as we have seen, Solomon is not going to shy away. Solomon is not going to shy away from any of this stuff. So, I turn to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what's already been done. And then I saw, there is more gain in wisdom than in folly. There's more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same event happens to all of them. I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? What am I wasting all this time for? And I said in my heart, this also is vanity, for of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in all the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, and what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a striving after the wind. There is a kind of suffering that I am doing my best to make all this stuff work, but we'll trying to get used to it. There's a kind of suffering that is it's bothersome. Nobody really warns you about what happens when you pursue wisdom. This is not suffering because you made a bad decision. This is not suffering because you did something wrong. This is not suffering because you could have changed it. You could have done something better. You could have done something different. Those are consequences. You run up your credit card and then the credit card company expects to pay you back. People aren't going to feel sorry for you because you made the decision to run up your credit card. But when it seems like you've done everything right, when it seems like you've done the stuff you were supposed to do, when you know the things you're supposed to know and things still don't work out, that's worse. That's why the good things happen to why the bad things happen to good people, right? And so that's a little further down the road, but this kind of suffering happens because you are wise. It happens because you make good decisions. It happens because you see things clearly. And so this is where Solomon is in this section that we read. And unfortunately, it's where a lot of us live. We experience things that we don't want to experience. We live in situations that we don't want to be in, not because we were foolish, but we live there because we're wise, because the lights are on, because our eyes are open, because we understand what's going on, and in that understanding there is grief, and in that understanding there is vexation, and in that understanding there is suffering, and we figured it out. Right? We figured it out, and that's the problem. So I turn to consider, verse 12, wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what's already been done. Solomon turns. Solomon pivots. Solomon makes a change. So we've talked about what he did. We talked about the projects and the building and the pleasures and the all of the stuff that he had done before. And now he's going to come back and examine the question that is underneath all of this. Not wisdom applied to a specific problem. Not wisdom that says how can I use my wisdom? How can I use what God has given me to solve this thing? But I'm going to look at wisdom itself. I'm going to see if maybe wisdom itself can be my end. And so he pairs wisdom and folly. And so it's this extreme. It's one end and the other. You can't really understand what it is to be wise without also understanding what it is to be foolish. The entire book of Proverbs it's the reason why it's not just a list of things that good people do, but it's also a list of things that foolish people do, because you need to understand that foolishness leads a certain direction, and wisdom leads a certain direction. And so he says, what can a man do that comes after the king? And so what else is there? Somebody's already done it. Somebody's already said it. The temple has been built. The Proverbs have been written. The song has been, everything has been done. And so what is it? What is it, successor? What is it, my son, that you are going to do? And so if you're less than me, if you're less wise than me, if you're less frugal than me, if you're less intelligent than me, whatever, you're going to waste it. If you're foolish, you're just going to waste what I've done. But if you're wise, you're going to understand that you can't really do anything else. What can the man do that comes after the king? What else is there? What else is there to be done? And I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, then there is more gain in light than in darkness. And so we need to be precise here, because Solomon is not building towards he's not building towards a rejection of wisdom. And so, as with all of this, we're going to set up a problem, and then there's going to be some resolution to the problem at the end. So as I'm going through this, don't think that this is all just the rantings of a crazy person. He's not even telling us that wisdom and folly are equivalent. This is an affirmation. This is what he sees. This is not an assumption. He sees wisdom. He sees folly. He knows. This is not something somebody else told him. This is not an inherited belief. Solomon tests this empirically, and wisdom wins, right? There's more to be gained when you can see than there is when you can't see. There's more to be gained in light than in darkness. There's more to be gained by wisdom than by folly. And so it's basically as basic as the human experience gets. When you turn the lights off in a room, you can see less in that room than you can when the lights are on. And it doesn't matter what's in the room, right? So if you're in a room and it's beautifully decorated and it's just awesome, and you turn the lights off, it no longer matters that the room is beautiful. You can't see anything. If you're in the room and there are traps, and there's mouse traps laying on the floor, and there's Lego piles and all this stuff that you're going to walk through, and you got to try to walk through with the light. It's better to have the lights on, so you can at least see where the pitfalls are, and you can see and understand what's going on. Now, it doesn't change them. Understand that just because you know the bad things are going to happen, just because you're wise to it, just because you understand it, doesn't make it different. It doesn't really change anything. And this is the frustration that he will talk about, and this is the frustration that comes out. And so you would think that if I'm wise, then I can make the outcome different. If I'm wise, then I can make the situation different. If I'm wise, then I can do something about it. But a lot of times, wisdom doesn't lead to a change in circumstance. Wisdom leads to a change in me. So when in the next few verses, when this passage starts turning a little bit darker, hold on to this, right? Hold on to this thing that there is more in light than in darkness. There's more in wisdom than in folly. The argument is not that wisdom is worthless. The argument is it's more difficult than that. It's more nuanced than that. Wisdom is real. Wisdom's better. But that's what makes the next part of this so hard for us to see. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same event happens to all of them. The wise person sees. The wise person knows. The wise person understands. The fool is just wandering blindly through life. And yet, the same thing happens to both of them. One is clear-headed and clear-sighted and has situational awareness and the ability to see the consequences before they arrive and understand what's going on. And this is not a small thing. And the ability to see consequences is a pretty big deal, right? You need to understand what's going to happen when you grab the pot right off the stove. When you grab that cast iron skillet without that little handle on it, you're going to be in trouble. And you need to have the ability to understand those consequences. But he says in the end, the same event happens to all of them. It's better to be wise. Is it better to see it on the horizon? Solomon doesn't really talk about it here, but it is obvious that what he's talking about is death. It doesn't matter how wise you are, and it doesn't matter how foolish you are. You are going to arrive at the same destination. The wisest person you know and the dumbest person you know are both going to die. Death does not discriminate and does not discern between wisdom and folly. Now, maybe the time can be different, but ultimately, the wisest and the most foolish are going to die. Solomon sees it. He looks at it. He's toward the end of his life now. He's getting old, and he understands that all of his getting and all of his wisdom and all of his, everything that he's done, what's going to happen? He gonna die. And this is not an abstract philosophical puzzle that he is trying to work his way through. This is not something that is beyond comprehension, right? This is something that keeps folk awake now. You plan for it. You got wills and living wills and life insurance policies and all of these things because we understand that we are going to die. We have watched careful lives unravel. We have watched careless lives survive. And there's really no explanation for it, except that in the end, everybody faces the same circumstance. And so we go from this better to be in light than in darkness, better to be wise than foolish. However, everybody gonna die. What is the answer? What's the answer to this? And so I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. So what's the use of it being, what's the use of me being wise? What's the use of me doing these things? What's the use of me struggling? Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart, this also is vanity. This is not a question that Solomon asks in weakness. It's not a question that he asks in faithlessness. It's not questioning God, really. It's a question of, it's a logician's question. It's a question of, I've counted the cost. Let me go back to me. There we go. I just noticed that The thing was on the next verse. This is a question of counting the cost. He's paid the price of wisdom. He's walked down the road. He's been wise. He's been disciplined. He's been restrained. He's had the willingness to look at hard truth. He's not been one to pull the wool over his own eyes. He's not looked at the world through rose-colored glasses. He's looking at the world as it is, and he runs this final calculation in his mind, and if the outcome is identical regardless, what's the point? What's the return on investment? Why be wise? Why? I wrote that whole book of Proverbs about wisdom crying in the street, come to me and I'll give you riches, I'll give you all this stuff and it'll be great and it'll be awesome, and wisdom is wonderful, and the fool leads to poverty, but the wise leads to wealth, and all of these wonderful things. And he says at the end, everybody's going to die, and why work? Why struggle? What's the point of this? And we need to sit with this. We need to resist the instinct to just just give it a platitudinal answer, to just say, well, God's got it all and God does have it all in control. I'm not denigrating that at all. But we need to understand where we are. We need to understand and sit with the ultimate futility of what we do under the sun. Because when we understand that what we do here and what we do temporally and what we do under the sun is not going to last, and it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, and it doesn't matter how many lessons you've taught, and it doesn't matter how much money you've made, and it doesn't matter how many companies you've founded, ultimately you are going to die. Elon Musk is going to die just like the homeless dude across the street. Both of them, neither of them are going to be immortal. And so ultimately everything you've accumulated doesn't matter. It's vanity. It's wind. It's fleeting. It's vapor. It's breath. It's real, but you can't hold it. It's present, but then it's gone. And so wisdom pursued as an end, wisdom for wisdom's sake, wisdom for my sake, wisdom to make me something, just leads to vanity. Because my wisdom is evaluated in the time scale of my life, and that life ends in death. It's going to be over. And then the vapor dissipates. And now what happens? Well, now Solomon piles on. For the wise, as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten, how the wise dies just like the fool. I heard a guy say one time, and this is, look, I know this is depressing so far, but it's going to get better, allegedly. There is going to be a time when somebody on this earth will think about you for the last time. You walk through one of those old graveyards. Every marker, there's no way to differentiate between wise and foolish. There's no way to differentiate really between good life and bad life. You can kind of tell sometimes whether they had money by how fancy the headstone is. But ultimately, all of them have ended up in the same place, ended up with the same result. before you get all upset about all this, remember, it's going to get better. So it's not only that they both die, it's that they both disappear. There's no real enduring remembrance of them. You look at the pyramids in Egypt. How many of us, the 3 pyramids at Giza, the Great Pyramid and the 2 smaller ones, who built them? I mean, probably some of us might be able to come up with Khufu for the first one, for the big one. But the other ones, I don't know. I'm sure there are Egyptologists that can tell you. I'm sure there are people that, study that like the pyramids that can tell you. Google can tell you. But when you're building it, surely the world will remember me. And they don't. In fact, we didn't even know who built it until we figured out how to read hieroglyphics. We know John Glenn and we know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. But do you know the name of the 6th man to walk on the moon? I don't. We could probably find out. When he's standing on the moon, there's not a lot of people that have walked on the moon. And this dude is one of them. And he's standing on the moon. And he looks and says, "This surely somebody's going to remember my name." But we don't. Because it's vanity. Because the wise and the foolish are headed in the same direction. Whatever wisdom have cultivated, whatever knowledge they've gained, it's just gone. And Solomon says, this is going to happen to me. The temple, the Proverbs, this expansion of the nation of Israel to a greater extent than it will ever be again. Time's going to cover all of it. He's not being pessimistic. Understand, this is not pessimism. This is not looking at the dark side. This is looking at the true side. It's not pessimistic, but it is painful. The wise dies just like the fool. Not similarly, just like. It's identical. Death comes for all of it. So now we've got this full weight of the argument. Wisdom is better. And it leads to the same place as folly. Time erases the record of both. And it leads to the conclusion in verse 17. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and striving after wind. I hated life. This is the wisest man that ever lived. One of the richest men that ever lived. This is one of the greatest kings that Israel ever had. And he says, I hated life. We want to reframe it. I want to look back into the original language and say maybe he's just displeased. Maybe he's just upset. Maybe he doesn't mean he hated it, but he means I hated life. He doesn't arrive here. He doesn't stumble into this conclusion. This is observation. This is honest reasoning. This is willingness to follow his logic to its conclusion. But here's the hope. It's under the sun. Under the sun will be, it's over 30 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. This is the boundary. This is the extent of the experiment. What does wisdom produce here? What does wisdom produce under the sun? What does wisdom produce on earth? And inside a world that is evaluated purely between life and death, with no thought of eternity, what does wisdom produce? Inside that system, inside that striving after the wind is the right metaphor. You're reaching for something that you can't grasp. It won't stay in your hand. You can't lay hold of it. You release it and it's already somewhere else. But Solomon names it. He says it's under the sun over and over and over again. And I will hammer this probably in every section, every lesson of this. It is under the sun. He's not saying that there's not verticality. He's not saying that there's not an eternity. He's saying that if you seek eternity here, you can't find it. This world cannot satisfy. Wisdom cannot save itself. Knowledge cannot save itself. Not because they're worthless. They are good. They're genuinely good. They come from God. With the wisdom that Solomon had was given to him from God. The wisdom was not bad. Seeing the wisdom as the only thing is bad. It's not that it's untrue, it's that it's an instrument. It's a category error. We're attempting to find fulfillment in things that were never meant to fulfill us. We're attempting to force wisdom to be something it was never intended to be, and indeed it cannot be. Because it's going to hit a wall, and the wall is death. And without something beyond that, nothing else matters. Death makes the question, why have I been wise, completely unanswerable if there's nothing beyond. But there's something, and I told you it's going to get better. There's something that Solomon can't see. In fact, he says, what can one do that comes after the king? What can one do that comes after me? Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12 that there is one that is greater than Solomon here. There is going to be, Solomon, you don't understand this yet, but there's going to be a man that's going to come after you that is going to do something new, that is going to do something greater, that is going to do something that proves that wisdom can extend beyond the veil of this life, that wisdom can break down this wall, that wisdom can lead to something that is greater than what we have. This is when God himself is going to step down from his throne, going to enter into this limited, finite, horizontal plane, and he is going to live wise, and he is going to live wisely, and he is going to do good, and he's going to do all the things that you said, Solomon, and he is going to die. He's going to face the wall too. But because he's not doing it for here, he's not going to stay dead. And so this resurrection doesn't simply add an afterlife to Solomon's equation. It doesn't just mean that if you're going to do good, if you do good, you'll die the same as everybody else, but then you get to go to heaven. But it's that the death is not equal anymore. It's not, Solomon, it's not equal like you think it is. I understand in all of your wisdom and all of your getting under the sun, this is what you could see, but you were wrong in this regard. It's not going to be forgetting. We're not going to be forgotten. We're going to be remembered because God is going to remember us. We are going to be remembered by a God that doesn't forget, who holds every wise act in his hand. It's a God that remembers the things that we do. that remembers the wisdom that we show. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15, it's the end of his argument about the resurrection. He says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of God, the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor is not in vain. This is not in vain. Solomon, under the sun, it's all in vain. Under the sun, it doesn't work. Under the sun, things don't go the way you want them to do. But when you can look beyond the sun, when you can look beyond the physical sun to the sun, you understand that what we experience matters. What we experience means something. The logic, Solomon, your logic only holds if death is the final word, but it's not. And we are people who live between Solomon's diagnosis. I've gone way too long, and I apologize. We live between Solomon's diagnosis and Christ's resolution. We inhabit the world that Solomon describes, where wisdom doesn't guarantee outcomes, where the careful and the careless will suffer alike, where death comes for everyone in the room, and we shouldn't pretend otherwise. Solomon's honesty is a gift to us. It gives us permission to say what is true, to say the true thing, to ask the hard questions. To ask the hard questions without calling it faithlessness, but we also live on the other side of the resurrection. We know what Solomon did not know. And this changes not only what we see, but also what we do with what we see. We pursue wisdom because it's genuinely better. We hold it humbly because we know it's not the ultimate. I pursue it because I know it's the thing that is good. But I also understand that it is relegated to its proper place. It is not oriented to bring anything to me. It is not oriented to bring goodness to me. It is oriented so that I can bring glory to God. Even when life is hard, even when it's difficult, because there's another king that made a final calculation, and his comes out differently. What you do is not in vain. What you do will not be forgotten. Your wisdom is not striving after the wind, but it's held by the God who holds everything. It's not under the sun that matters. It's what is beyond the sun. Thank you. Lord bless you. I love you. God loves you. And I'll talk to you next week.